There's a certain pleasure, I think, albeit perhaps a perverse one, in being a hate figure. There's power in that. You know you're getting to someone. Manson is a past master at getting under people's skin.
If you can imagine the class cut-ups from your school, the ones who are always making trouble, you give them all the time and all the money in the world to do whatever they want. That's the Manson crew.
We were different, and I mean, we just knew it, you know? We had the attitude like, we're rock stars.
I consider myself an artist more than a musician, and I think the music and how people are affected by it, and my performance, and me speaking to people, all of that together adds up to what Marilyn Manson is.
In the mid-1990s, Marilyn Manson exploded onto the world stage with their dark version of the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams. Their charismatic frontman and subsequent albums swept them to the top of the charts and guaranteed their place as one of the most influential and controversial bands in modern music.
The winner of the best album is my controversial mate, Mr. Marilyn Manson.
This is the story of how a sub-goth band from Florida became the global phenomenon that is Marilyn Manson. The man who would become Marilyn Manson was born Brian Warner on January the 5th, 1969 in Canton, Ohio, an all-American town just outside Cleveland. The town the young Manson grew up in is a deeply religious and conservative community, and his schooling was to be no different. Attending Heritage Christian School in southwest Canton, he was taught the dogma and theology he would dramatically reject and criticise in later life. However, few places from his childhood have been treated with such significance as his grandfather's cellar.
Everybody's heard a lot of the stories about the experiences I had with my strange grandfather, which he was just a strange character who, and I call him a character because he doesn't seem like a real person in some ways, but he had this large collection of really deviant pornography that he kept in the basement, and he would turn these trains on, and we would think he would be playing with his trains, but he was actually doing a lot of really sick things, and this was something I discovered when I was about 12, and it was something that I became really fascinated with, and it was a weird introduction for me into, you know, everything. It was kind of a loss of innocence, and it was a realization that a lot of things that are thought to be pure weren't at all.
In 1988, when Manson was 18, his father, Hugh, got a new job as a furniture salesman in Fort Lauderdale, just outside Miami. The Warners left Canton, and it was to be from the sunny beaches of South Florida that the future Antichrist Superstar would emerge.
In the early 90s, Fort Lauderdale was very much like a party town. If you ever watched those old spring break movies, that's what it was about. The topless girls on the beach, the wet t-shirt contest, very flashy, very palm tree, very sunny.
So it was that party crowd and spring break mixed with all the people who came down to die. So that's what Fort Lauderdale was known for at the time. You know, it was the retirement place, and so it was a kind of a contradiction that was going on.
Enrolling in Browood Community College, Manson began studying journalism and drama and simultaneously started writing for local music magazines, a pursuit that would become vital research for his later career.
I don't really know how we ended up in college together. We just, I guess we both decided to go, and we really took the same courses. We took drama, which was kind of weird for both of us because that was the first time we were taking that. But I think it worked for both of us being on stage. And he wasn't actually involved in music at the time, but it was still just I guess a way to get through college and be creative. And we took creative writing, which helped both of our writing as far as him being a journalist and me being a musician.
I'd have to say that the first time that I met Brian was probably at an editorial meeting for 25th Parallel, which was an arts and entertainment, lifestyle-oriented, rather eclectic magazine published here in South Florida. And he was the music editor and I was a contributing writer. The questions that he asked and the slants that he used for his articles were not your normal fodder, how did your band get your name kind of stuff. It was much more elegantly, the questions were elegantly posed. They were much more thoughtful. I believe that his articles seemed to provoke an introspective response from whoever he was interviewing.
Brian just started interviewing bands, mostly alternative bands. I remember him doing Front 242, Thrill Kill Call, which terrified him. A couple other bands. He used to go down to Miami. We used to interview him, and I would always go with him on the interviews. And he'd come out and tell me about them. And little did I know at the time that he was collecting all this data in his mind and saying, okay, this is working for this band. This is working for this band. If I put this together and I do a band, it's got to work. And really, it's like when you look at what he's done, you could see all these influences of all these bands that, a lot of them that he did interview, and, he kept that all in his mind and made it work for him.
Opening up an avenue for bringing out his art through writing first about the music, and then sort of being able to say, you know what, I can probably do this. I could take the things that I'm writing and set it to music. And I don't have to be Luciano Pavarotti with a voice to be able to put my art out.
Meeting guitarist and songwriter Scott Patetsky at a local party, Manson began to channel his creative energy into making music.
We started working together, and he convinced me to buy a drum machine, which I liked very, very much. And even though he wasn't a singer per se, he got his ideas out, kind of a talk singing sort of thing. And we were into industrial, and nobody in industrial really sang. It was just, any melodies were achieved by, synthesizers or samples. But it made for a really good combination. It was a very bizarre, surreal, not quite metal, not quite industrial, very ugly, weird thing. And I didn't think anybody would get into it or fall for it. But it worked out. And shortly after we had a body of songs together, we recruited Brian and Perry, who became, I believe it was Olivia Newton-Bundy and Zsa Zsa Speck to my Daisy Berkowitz and Brian Warner's Marilyn Manson. Brian
came to me and said, hey, me and Scott recorded this cassette, and listen to it, tell me what you think, because I want to do a band. And it's called Marilyn Manson, and this is the idea I had, and you're going to have these names, and it was going to be kind of a shock band, but it was going to be a joke. It wasn't to be taken seriously. And I listened to the cassette, and for a 4-track cassette, it was good. It was definitely original sound. Brian sounded good, especially for the first time actually singing. His lyrics were good.
But what really got me that was funny was the idea of using combination names, where we use the female first name of the first name, I should say, of a female icon, like a positive female icon, and the last name of a mass murderer or a serial killer or a cult leader. And when we came up with Marilyn Manson and Daisy Berkowitz, that was too funny. So when we got everybody else to be a part, anybody else to be a part of the band, they adopted the same names in a similar way, like Olivia Newton-Bundy and Zsa Zsa Speck.
And I think I confessed to him that my first masturbation experience was with Olivia Newton-John, And so he just said, you know, this is going to be your name. What do you think? And that was perfect for me because, you know, that worked. I was into Volkswagens too, which, you know, Ted Bundy's into Volkswagens. So, so that worked out good. And, you know, he just kind of kept that going with everybody's names. I really don't know the stories, why he picked the other female names for the other people. I don't know if they've had experiences of masturbation with, with those celebrities or not.
Well, one of the points of the name was to almost a mockery of controversy, a mockery of the phoniness of show business, you know. But I thought it was interesting to take those two because of their history in popular culture, how America has put them on the same status. They're equally memorable, you know, for their own separate reasons.
I think the original defining concept of Marilyn Manson as a band and as a persona, if you like, is one of contrasts. You have one of the world's principal icons of sexuality, of the sex kitten personified in Marilyn Monroe, and against that you have what's effectively became a sort of secular version of Satanism in the form of Charles Manson. You don't just get the contrast. What Manson was also interested in was the way in which kids were increasingly looking at serial killers as almost icons.
People love reading about serial killers. People love to read about ex-models. You know, people knew them. The names were already there. And it just put a little, you know, ring in person's head. And, you know, the kids are into anything evil.
Getting a gig at Churchill's, a small venue in Miami, everything was ready for Marilyn Manson and the spooky kids to take the stage for the very first time.
It was late winter 1990. We had a small body of songs together with the four-piece setup and a drum machine. And we had our first show April 28th, 1990 at Churchill's Hideaway down in Miami.
When we were opening for a band called The Goods, which were mainstream, kind of almost a pop rock, and here we are just, you know, very underground. I know we went to, I was just graduated cosmetology school, so we went back to my school and we just got like all the used mannequin heads so we could place them on stage, and we would, you know, put little X's on their foreheads and stuff like that. It was very low budget. We had a drum machine. Churchill's in itself is a very small kind of just, you know, it's a dive bar that bands like to play at.
Went out to Churchill's as a small, very unique pub, believe it or not, in Miami, English pub. And I was just got off the road, and I went to have a beer there and see my friend, the owner, Dave Daniels, and I saw Marilyn on stage for the first time. It was a scary experience, basically because Marilyn, it was very noisy, very raw. Marilyn didn't have a drummer, and I felt that it was an experience that I didn't want to experience again, so to speak.
I think it went over fairly well. Brian had extreme stage fright, and he continued to have that throughout our times playing together. We'd be walking on stage, and he'd be throwing up as he was walking on stage. I mean, there was times that, you know, we were starting a song, and he was nowhere to be found, and he was like, okay, is he going to come out and, you know, and sing or not? And but Churchill's was definitely, you know, you kind of knew after playing Churchill's that there's something there. It definitely could work, and it had to be refined, and you could see the potential behind it, and you could see Brian's character starting to evolve at that time.
After only a few gigs, Olivia Newton-Bundy and Jean Speck left the band. Replacing Bundy on bass was Gidget Geen, who would become a legend of the band's early years.
I used to see Manson out at clubs, like, a lot, and we'd always look at each other, like the girls at the prom, like, ooh, what's she in that dress? You know, catty glances, that sort of thing. And then I was at a Love and Rockets show, and I got dragged out of there by the cops, like in Hogtied, and he saw that, and so then there was another incident with, again, that band Saigon Kick played, and I like spit in the guy's face. It was a big scene, broke out. And so he saw me like at clubs all the time, like getting into trouble and doing all this and that with like crazy hair and makeup and nutty clothes. And so I guess that like attracted him. And then I met him at some club in Miami, I think it was the Kitchen Club. And he came up to me and he says, "Oh, hey, I got this band, you know, I might need a bass player. Would you be into it?" And I said, "No, I'm a guitar player. I'm playing hardcore. I don't think you can handle it." You know, he's like, "No, just come and check it out." So he gave me a tape, and it was brilliant. It was like so lo-fi and arty, very creative. I never heard anything like it. And I was like, "Wow, this is boss." So I went to see them play. And he came up to me again and said, "Look, we don't like this bass player. Come on, play for us." I said, I don't know. I'll check it out. So they got like the 9 Inch Nails gig where they opened up for him, and they wanted me to play that show. So I'm like, that sounds cool. You know, I'll try it. So I joined the band, and we decided to like, you know, I needed a name. So I came up with the Gein part first because I was always influenced by Ed Gein. You know, he was the guy in the 50s that Psycho and Silence of the Lambs, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based on. And also my stepdad grew up in that town where that happened in Wisconsin. He used to always tell me stories about it. And I was like, man, this guy's crazy. You know, and he was like digging up graves, peeling off their skin, wearing their skin as clothes. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of like a borderline transvestite, and I'm into like horror movies, and like Ed Gein's perfect for me. And then Gidget just was like a cute name, you know, to put the two together. It means nothing. It's like I was into the Gidget movies or anything. So the Scott would come over to my house and show me some bass lines and this and that, showed me like 3 or 4 songs that they had. And then we wrote some more songs together. Then we played the 9 Inch Nails gig, and that was like my first gig in the band, like in front of like thousands of people. It's like, this is cool, you know. So that's why I did that.
You know, Gidget, I was just a huge fan of. When I went to go see him, I was sitting there watching him. He was just outrageous looking. You know, he had the pantyhose. He had the colorful shirts. You know, he had the Gene Simmons guitar pick. You know, he had the green dreadlocks. You know, all the girls loved him.
Stephen Beer, a.k.a. Madonna Wayne Gacy, also joined the new lineup. Intended as a keyboard player, Wayne Gacy arrived just in time for the band's first break.
Stephen came into the band just about springtime, and he started out more as a fixture. I mean, I think there were a few shows where he was just on stage playing with Army men. In fact, in one show in particular, July 4th, 1990, we got a spot opening for 9 Inch Nails at a place called Club New down in Miami Beach. At that show, Stephen he had this weird costume on. I think it was kind of army, like crazy army man, but with like a leather jacket, and he had a helmet with a flag in it. And he played with army men and threw cold cuts at the crowd.
They were the opener band. Nobody knew who they were. No one really knew who 9 Inch Nails were at that time, really. But you know, people just went. It was packed. And they played this band, and I was just like, wow, what is going on here? Couldn't really hear them that much, you know, because the sound was like not the best sound at that time. But visually, it was just incredible. And I was like, man, that band's really cool, man. Very kooky, you know. And I thought that was a great, you know, introduction of what they were about. And I was like, I want to know who they were. And I asked people, and it was, that's Marilyn Manson Spooky Kids.
Now that the Spooky Kids were fully formed and with the beginnings of a local following, the band turned their attentions to promoting themselves.
Actually, the first time I ever became like a real fan was I saw them there, and I recognized them as their name and everything. And then I went to a store called Uncle Sam's, which was a independent record store down here. And they had like a little metal, it was like a little lunchbox. I think it was a cardboard lunchbox that, you know, Marilyn made, and joined the Marilyn Manson Spooky Kids fan club. And so I went out and I got a crayon and I wrote my name and address and put it in. The next minute I know, he called my answer machine and welcomed me into the fan club. And I used to get newsletters, which were incredible. I mean, the newsletters were just funny. They would come in the, in the mail, and they would tell you to do little goofy things like, call this club, even though we're not playing, ask them when we're playing. And we used to do it. Prank this person, because, Marilyn wouldn't like somebody. So let's prank this person, and we'd all prank them.
Well, one of the things I liked about Manson was he was influenced by like propaganda, which is something I've always been into. And I would see stickers and flyers for Manson before they even had a band. They were promoting, like, he kind of came up with Marilyn Manson as like a make-believe band. It wasn't even like something he was going to do, I think, until he met Scott, and then they decided to start a band. But that was like the main thing, promoting, making flyers, making posters, T-shirts, anything to like get the name out. And the philosophy, we had is if you have your name everywhere, people are going to think you're famous because they see it everywhere. Even if they don't like see it, they're going to see it, And then when you tell them, oh yeah, I'm in Marilyn Manson, they're like, oh, I heard of you guys. You guys are great, So it's like it's propaganda and publicity.
You'd see them out in the clubs with their little lunch boxes, and they would hand out their flyers, which the flyers were always cool, and you wanted to save them because that was like, it was very unique and stuff. It wasn't like something you'd just throw away. They made it so interesting that you would save the flyers. They also had little stickers. They had, candy bars. They had their own candy bars. They had anything that would draw some kind of attention.
As their efforts began to pay off, the band's demos attracted the attention of the local media and Florida DJ Glenn Richards.
We'd release demos like maybe every 6 months. As soon as we wrote some new songs, we'd record them on the 4-track and then get them out to like local radio stations. So they would play them, and then we'd sell them at the shows, and pretty much just gave them out to people and just to create a buzz.
I think Glenn Richards was a big part of them becoming who they were. He was a radio DJ down here for a radio station called She, and he had a local show. And he supported a lot of local bands, but he was really into Marilyn Manson and Spooky Kids. He used to play their music. He used to wear the T-shirts. He used to be at every show, Even if you pick up all the old demos, he was thanked in it. He was thanked on the first albums. He was a major part of bringing them as big as they are.
I met Brian at a club in Hollywood, and he gave me the tape, Big Black Bus, 4 songs, and talked a little bit for a while. And then I had to go to another club to see another band. So I popped the tape in the car on the way, and I'm listening to it. And by the time I got to My Monkey, I knew what I was going to play. I mean, it stood out from the other songs on the tape. Strange Same Dogma, White Knuckles. Those were like really industrial songs. But My Monkey had more of it was a little bit slower. It had more of a rock, kind of a rock beat. It was just funny. The voice on it, the lyrics were very funny. It was just catchy. I mean, it's just one of those songs that was catchy. I don't know if it was that following Sunday or not. I put it on, and I was waiting for the phone calls. What is that you're playing? Get that crap off the air. Kind of a redneck element in South Florida at the time. The only calls I got were, what was that, and where can I get it? Who was that? Play more of that.
I was in my car driving from Palm Beach, and I heard this song on the radio, and it was a song totally unique, different and unique, and it caught my attention. And then what really shocked me was that at the end of the song, the DJ came on and said, this was my #1 request this evening. It was Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids. It was a song called My Monkey, and it totally blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is the same band. This is not the same band that I saw a few months ago. After hearing that, I was intrigued by what I heard, and I decided to contact the DJ that had heard him play, my friend Glenn Richards, and I you know, I asked him. I said, "Is it true that this is, you know, that this was your most requested song?" And that evening, he says, "Yes. You know, the band has improved 100%, and they have grown a lot." He says, "You should manage these guys, Tovar. They have a future. There's a potential in them to be very successful, I think." And I was really impressed because I went to see them. It was like on a weeknight, like on a Thursday night, if I recall, and there were like 300 kids there to see Manson. They all looked like him. They all dressed like him, and there was a total fanatical thing, you know.
John Tovar, what a character. A tremendous ear for talent. He he could find a band and know that they were going to be successable.
John Tovar was actually at our very first show at Churchill's, and he was one of the people that hated us. He didn't quite get it, and I don't blame him at all for it. But he'll tell you that he remembers, you know, walking away just hating it, just disgusted. And but about a year and a half, 2 years later, he approached us with his partner Frank Collari to manage us, and they helped out a lot. They got it. They understood what we were doing and how we were doing it.
As the band's local following swelled, they added Freddie Streithorst, aka Sarah Lee Lucas, on drums. They also developed an aspect of their performance, which would become an integral part of the Marilyn Manson package.
We started out with the drum machine, and we used that for like a year or two. And then I think it might have been Scott's decision to bring in the real drummer because he was friends with Freddie. So we figured we'd try it just to maybe give like more power to the music, to have live drums and to make it seem like a real band. So with the drum machine, it never really seemed like we were a band. It just seemed like we were just kind of like dancing monkeys in front of a machine. So we brought in Freddie, and it was funny too, man, because he's like a cripple. He's got like a gimpy leg, and he comes walking in like limping, and his one leg is like 1/10 of the size of his other leg. We're thinking, how's this guy gonna play like hit the bass drum, you know, and the hi-hat at the same time? But he was good.
With the drum machine, the sounds are there, but with a drummer, the person is there. I mean, just the simple, you know, being able to see the sticks flying and moving, and to hear the drums acoustically, it really makes a big difference, you know. And it gave us a more rock and roll aspect.
And I remember the first show that they got a live drummer when I went to see them at the Button South, and it just completely changed the energy of the band. And then they just started adding all different kinds of elements to the show. It was like they wanted to push the envelope. What could they get away with next? What could they add to a rock show that didn't belong in a rock show?
We wanted to have a band that would be like a band we would want to go see. You know, that's pretty much why we did it. We weren't trying to be shocking or scary. We just wanted to be entertaining. You know, because I'd go to concerts and I'd see some of my favorite bands, and after three songs, I'd just be bored. I'm like, there's got to be something more to this. It's like, why can't it be like theater? Why can't we bring back like the Alice Cooper, the Bowie, the Kiss sort of things, you know? We probably spent just as much time on that we did as the music, maybe even more. Because, you know, we wanted to have a stage show, and we wanted to be a band that we would want to go see. You know, so we were just always kind of trying to think stuff up, you know, because we had short attention spans. Maybe it's because we were TV babies, you know, and fed, you know, cereal our whole lives, and the sugar just made us go crazy. But that's, you know, so we just did whatever we could think of, man, like artistically. You know, like one time we had a show, Halloween show. And we thought, well, let's get a piñata. You know, that'd be cool, you know, the piñata where you hit with the stick and the candy. I'm like, well, I mean, why don't we fill it with meat, you know? So we went to the store and we got a bunch of raw meat and then dog food for like filler and blood, and just packed the piñata full of meat and had it on the stage above us. And had it there the whole time. And at the end of the show, like the last song, we're like, okay, here's the stick, you know. And some big skinhead grabbed the stick and hit the piñata. And the meat and everything just flew all over the dance floor. And so there's skinheads, punk rockers, like slam dancing, slipping, all in blood and guts.
People were just, they were all laughing and gleeful, and all of a sudden, oh my, it was just unforgettable. The meat pinata was unbeatable. And I'm on, and the place is packed. I'm on stage, and I can't believe the place is packed. I'm playing. While I'm playing, I'm saying to myself, why are you all here? Even I don't get this, you know? But it worked.
They were so wild, these shows. They were just crazy. It was so theatrical. There were props, there were people, there were naked girls, there were naked boys, farm animals, phallic symbols. At one point, I was standing at a show, sort of standing, 20, 30 feet back from the stage on the dance floor, and he's throwing things from the stage out into the crowd, and I'm standing and watching, and you're not even blinking because you can't miss what might happen, what's going on up there. There's so much activity and so much going on. And at one point, something sort of flies past me, and I look down at my feet, and there's a big black dildo and I just, there I was.
It was kind of like a horror movie, It wasn't meant to be like, look at us, we're going to kill you. It was kind of like, we're heavily influenced by horror movies, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Night of the Living Dead, and all that. So just like we emulated our rock idols, we emulated movies as well, or TV. It was like whatever we were into, we kind of like wanted to, in a way, turn people onto it, so we would like take our influences and put it in the show or in the music or whatever.
Pop culture is so saturated, and that's how I grew up in front of a TV, seeing a commercial and then a cartoon, then a guns show, and then this and that, and all of that became the way I communicate. Very fast and very visual and in a lot of different formats.
If you were offended by it, if you didn't get it, you weren't supposed to get it. If you got it, then you were in.
By 1993, the band had dropped the Spooky Kids and were now simply Marilyn Manson. They were by now the biggest band in South Florida and were gaining many local accolades.
Deep Purple, Marilyn Manson. Dan, weren't you just here, man?
You guys play these games where you send me away and then you send me back. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who voted. Thanks to my mom for fucking the sausage. Thanks to this guy, I don't know. And thanks to Wade for being such an awesome blowjob. And thanks to Rolly for being a Swedish fucking asshole.
And I also had him present the National Release Award, which, of course, I knew Saigon Kick was going to win. I was privy to the winners beforehand, but nobody else knew. And I had Brian go up there and present the award. And he brought up Geordie White to help him present it, who later joined his band. He was still in Ambugalard at the time. And they get up there together, and they're goofing around. And it comes time to present the award. The winner is Saigon Kick. And no Saigon Kick in the building, of course. They're out on tour. They're big stars at this point. And the South Florida scene is very fickle, and they turn against bands that sort of go on to bigger and better things. So Saigon Kick was booed.
It should be Your Mother Fucks the Sausage, but it's The Lizard by Saigon Kick. We'll let Geordie White accept it, because he's the next best thing to Matt Kramer. Thank you very much. Does anybody want to smash it on the dance floor? Unless they're here to accept it. I guess we're going to have to smash it on the dance floor. Oh, you hit a girl. Are you all right? I didn't mean to hit you. Love is on the way.
We had definitely started to treat them as a national act prior to them actually getting a deal. We were buying radio spots. We were treating them as a national concert. And there was such an anticipation, and everybody knew, everyone who was involved on any level, whether it was those of us who were promoting the shows, John, the band, the people in the audience, the people that worked in the venues and the clubs, the people in magazines and at radio, everybody knew that there was just an amazing anticipation of watching something become huge.
And then we started getting even a little bit bigger. You know, we'd get articles written about us. We were winning awards, and every record label would come to see us. Every record label would fly us to New York to do showcases, and every label would turn us down. You know, we got turned down by everybody.
Since interviewing and supporting the 9 Inch Nails back in the very early days of the Spooky Kids, Marilyn had become friends with their enigmatic frontman, Trent Reznor. Reznor, by now a seminal figure in the alternative music scene, convinced his record company Interscope to give him a subsidiary label, Nothing Records. In 1993, Marilyn Manson became their first signing.
And so we got signed to Interscope, and then we got like an advance. You know, they gave us a certain amount of money to do the record. They gave us a certain amount of money for equipment. It was like nothing, man. It was like, it's kind of like embarrassing to tell you how much money we got, but we got like a publishing advance, so we all got like half of the money up front, and you know, we each got like a few $1,000s, and we're like in heaven. It's like, this is great, you know, they're giving us this money. It's nuts. So they put us in the studio. We go to Miami, I guess, to cut down on costs from flying us somewhere and putting us up in hotels and that. And we do the record with Rolly Massaman produced it, who used to be in the Swans. And we thought that was really cool because the Swans were like one of the pioneers of like the industrial movement. So we thought it'd be like good to have him do us.
You know, we had fun, but things were professional, and we did most of the record in roughly about 2 months. And once it was all put together and sent for Trent to hear, his response was, "Gee, it sounds like a really good demo."
And then Manson flew out to LA to mix it with Trent. And then I went there like a week later to hang out. And as we're there, we realized all the tracks are like out of sync. It's like the whole record is like messed up. So we had to pretty much re-record everything. And then we did, the drums were like screwy, the bass was out, so I had to redo all my bass lines. And then, and the drums were like so messed up, I think we wound up using like a drum machine for the whole record. It's like a lot of people don't know that. It's not like live drums, it's computers. And then when I got out to LA, I started getting like messed up with like drugs again. So the whole like record was like recorded like on heroin. And I had like these nutty like trashy like girls coming and going, like she-males, you know, and I'd leave with these people like all the time and come back. But I did the record great, you know, I didn't mess anything up.
As Gidget's addiction worsened, Manson was forced into making the hard decision of sacking his long-standing collaborator.
I left the band, I guess it was 93, Christmas of 93, and I, after a series of heroin overdoses, run-ins with the law, warnings from the band, the management, the record labels, everything pretty much broke down at that point, where I was forced into rehab. So I went in there. It was Christmas, a few days before Christmas, and Manson came to visit me, crying, "Oh, just get better. You know, you're doing the right thing. We're going on tour in 6 months. You get it together. You know, everything will be cool." So I thought, okay, good. You know, I'll stay in this rehab for a month or whatever, do what I got to do, and then. I get a letter like Christmas Eve, like FedEx, thinking it's like a Christmas card or something, and no, it was like a form letter from the management. Your services are no longer needed, you know, this and that. So I got fired like on Christmas Eve in rehab, and So that was that. So I'm in rehab, and I'm thinking, like, they have a show on New Year's Eve, and I'm going to be in rehab on New Year's Eve, and I'm thinking, like, well, what's going on? And so they got that Twiggy guy in the band, and I'm like, well, man, he better not be using my equipment and all this. So I'm in rehab calling managers, screaming, and then I'm in rehab with all these criminals, you know, drug addicts that are nuts, and I'm telling them what happened. And I got these big, like, black dudes asking me where Manson lives. And I'm, like, right down the street from his house. The rehab was in the same neighborhood. And they're like, oh, tell me, you know, I got an alibi. I'm in rehab. I'll go over there and I'll make it look like an accident. I'll do this and that. And it was, like, almost going to happen. It was, like, a serious thing that, like, damage was going to be done to, like, him and his family.
In September of '93, we had a showcase for Nothing Records. We had been talking to Trent Reznor for a while, and this was the show that would officially seal the deal as to whether Nothing would sign us. And it was pretty much in the bag, but still. And the only problematic factor was Brad Gidget Keane. He was not fitting in. He was not working out. He had a lot of problems that we had to address along with him, and this particular showcase was his last show. He wound up recording the bass parts for Portrait, but that was his last show.
I don't think they wanted to have him leave the band, but I mean, they really had no choice. He had a problem, and he needed to take care of it, and you know, I think they gave him a lot of leeway, and they just had they had to make a change. I mean, it was a terrible show. He was not contributing to the band, you know, as he had been and as he could.
When I got out of rehab, the way I was thinking was I was going to have, like, a meeting with everybody and try to tell them, like, okay, I understand, you know, what happened. I'm sorry. Could I just, like, talk to you all? With the managers there, of course. And I wanted to have it, like, at our warehouse. And I was going to, like, get them all into the warehouse and close the door and pour gasoline everywhere and set everybody on fire. So I had all these crazy, like, revenge fantasies. And it took me years to get over it until I realized that it wasn't their fault. It was my fault. You know, it was like, if I was in their position, I would have done the same thing.
Geordie was a natural replacement. I mean, Geordie was, like, hanging out with Brian all the time. They were good friends. And Geordie's a great guitar player. Believe it or not, even though he's known, I guess, for being a bass player in Manson. But I always knew him as a guitar player. Crazy personality. Like, Brian, I would think, would be kind of the mastermind of a prank, and Geordie would go and carry it out, is the way I would kind of characterize it. Remember one time in Tampa, we went for a music convention over there, a local music convention, and they were doing a showcase, and we were all staying in the same hotel. And Geordie would we were hanging out in different rooms, and Geordie would just be running up and down the hall creating mayhem, and he'd just show up at the front door with his penis in his hand, just spinning it around, and then run off. He liked to show his penis a lot.
With Twiggy Ramirez on bass, the band embarked on their first tour, supporting 9 Inch Nails and promoting Portrait of an American Family. The album came out on the 19th of July 1994 and became an underground success.
Portrait of an American Family, Manson's debut, is without question the most playful of all of the albums. I mean, playful, not in a kind of, I don't know, children's television kind of a sense. You know, it's got elements from children's television in there, but they're layered in with some pretty poisonous hooks. But still, it's deliberately throwaway. There's something about it which is fun, you know, which doesn't demand too much of the audience, that doesn't sort of, you know, have all these sort of pretensions to philosophy or whatever the hell else that start cropping up later. You can see elements of that, but the progression is very, very clear.
I think it's a great first record, and I think it's a great first release because it wasn't over-promoted. It wasn't like the label saying driving the product. You know, they let people buy it. They didn't tell people to buy it. They let people buy it. And that's really how it's got to be done.
Interestingly, when Manson progresses onto other albums, it's Portrait of an American Family that often gets left out of the chronology, which he doesn't talk about so much anymore, which isn't the persona fully formed. It's a sort of, you know, it's a pupil form of Manson, if you like.
As the portrait tour continued, Manson first came up against the conservative right of America. In Jacksonville, following an alleged nudity-filled gig, Marilyn was arrested for violation of the Adult Entertainment Code. He spent a short time in prison before making bail.
The incident in Jacksonville, which is how we will refer to it, I think there was a bit of a setup. I mean, I don't think there would have been cops at the show right on time to see, you know, Marilyn Manson with, you know, a sexual prosthetic or whatever you want to call it, something that's barely a legal offense, you know, just barely. But I mean, if the police saw an opportunity and they were there just at the right time to see it, it's kind of a setup. But again, you know, anything like that is gonna help us. You know, don't arrest the singer. You know, they'll print his picture and they'll do a story about it. Oh, you know.
Part of what Manson's all about is poking fun at people who don't have a sense of humor or a sense of don't have sense, and those people they don't get the joke because the joke's at their expense. So they're not going to get the joke. I think they took offense because it was being sacrilegious, you know, and just the whole traditional rock and roll is evil and it's corrupting our youth kind of thing. I mean, Elvis, John Lennon, rock and roll's been evil for a long time, and just Marilyn Manson was the new standard bearer.
And it had swiftly come to the point where an artist's arrest for obscenity, blasphemy, or whatever is like it's a battle scar. It's a badge of honor. You know, it's shown how, because the worst possible thing that can happen to an artist like Manson is to be accepted and endorsed by the mainstream. But of course, the mainstream that he was fighting against, the Christian right, the conservative right, and so forth, were generally too dumb to work out that every time they reacted, they created another 1,000 Manson fans.
If America's religious rights were concerned about Marilyn Manson, then what the singer was about to do would truly appall them.
Satanism is a repudiation of belief. It's not a repudiation of God because he doesn't exist. It's a repudiation of Christianity because it does.
In October 1994, Manson went to meet Anton LaVey, high priest and founder of the Church of Satan. Started in the mid-1960s by LaVey and often mistaken for devil worship, Satanism is more practical philosophy than a religion. After meeting with LaVey, Manson became a reverend of the church and a vocal advocate of its philosophy.
I know Manson was reading the Satanic Bible when I knew him, but I thought it was silly. I was like, what is this? You got to be kidding me. Come on. So I didn't want to have nothing to do with it. And he used to try to get me to read it. And, you know, after I left the band, he was still into it, and I heard he was going to, like, met Anton and was into the church, and I still thought it was completely ridiculous. But then I read it. I actually sat down, and I figured, well, I want to know what he's thinking. You know, I just want to kind of know, like, why he reads this. So I figured you really can't judge anybody until you've, like, walked in their shoes. So I picked it up, and I read it. And it was cool. It's not even like a Bible. It's just kind of like a philosophy. It's almost like rehashed, like Nietzsche, Darwinism, you know, survival of the fittest, you know, give love to people who deserve it.
Explaining Satanism in a brief and accessible fashion is difficult. It's a living, breathing creed, and like anything that actually has any validity, it's fucking complicated. But there are various different ways of describing it depending on who you're speaking to. So, for example, you could say that while Christianity likes to pretend it's copywritten things like compassion, not murdering people or worshipping their calves or whatever it is you're not supposed to do, what it really did was it deified three things. It deified obedience, abstinence, and ignorance.
Christianity is a social cancer. So the philosophy is to identify the cancer and eliminate however possible. And being as most Satanists are very creative people, the best way to do that is through culture, through arts, through science, etc. So we see Christianity as in the way of progress of the human race.
Which Satanism regards as being the important things that a person should live up to. It's independence of mind, it's self-indulgence, and it's individualism. It's curiosity. All of these things are embodied within the concept of Satanism. Another way of putting it is that there are only two sins in Satanism. Those sins are stupidity and cowardice. If you could remove those from human affairs, then all the problems would be solved.
Modern Satanism is an attack, an affront on consumerism, basically, the herd mentality, where as an American, I see the culture basically is targeting the middle of the road. The dumb people make better consumers. So the application of Satanism in the arts and aesthetics is attack on that. It's a survival thing, because not everybody thinks Madonna and Spielberg are the highest equivalent of the human imagination. Because those that have imagination think that there's a lot more to it.
Well, it's one philosophy among many that I enjoy and incorporate into my different ideas. As a kid growing up, I was into a lot of people like Aleister Crowley and Friedrich Nietzsche and Darwin and even Freud to a certain extent. And Anton LaVey was kind of a modern version of all of those people. And Satanism is something that gets really sensationalized in America, but it's really a philosophy about self-preservation and being an individual, and being your own God. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with worshiping the devil. In fact, at this point, if I'm not mistaken, Marilyn Manson is bigger than Satan.
Recruiting a new drummer, Gingerfish, the band had a loyal following, but had not broken the mainstream. Going into the studio again, they began work on an EP of remixes and covers. It would become Smells Like Children.
Smells Like Children was a reference to two things. A book called Perfume by Patrick Susskind. It's about a boy who's born with a strong sense of smell, and he finds that the smell of children is the purest, the smell of innocence is the purest thing. So he tries to distill that smell. In doing so, he becomes a mass murderer. It's a really interesting book. And also Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, there's a character called the Child Catcher. A lot of people told me that I looked like him, and as a kid I was very afraid of him, because he would go around and he would smell out the kids, and he would kidnap them. So the title was a reference to innocence, smell of innocence, and it was supposed to be like a children's record that wasn't for children.
Smells Like Children's the second major release from Manson, and in many respects, as he himself has confessed on an occasion or two, it's a fucking mess. It's an EP, it's got bits and pieces of what sounds like pranks performed while sort of out of their heads on something or other. It's got some covers, it's got some remixes. Basically, it looks like the kind of album, or EP indeed, that a band releases when they're on the way out, trying to get out of a contract, or just desperately need to raise some cash when the creative juices aren't flowing anymore. The other side to this, however, is that One of those covers was, of course, Sweet Dreams.
Well, we weren't quite ready to put together a second record. And everyone, as far as the label and management and all, felt that we should do more live dates. But we needed a break, so we took a break and we went down to New Orleans to record with Trent Reznor again. And that's when we put together the EP. Since we weren't ready for a full second record, we put together the EP, Smells Like Children, which featured Sweet Dreams. And Sweet Dreams, we had done a couple times locally in South Florida, but, or maybe, I'm not sure. Either we did it a couple times locally, or we only did it at the Portrait release party. But either way, it was something that we really felt good about. And you know, when you pick the right cover, it has sometimes when the right band picks the right cover, it can be real magic.
Manson made Sweet Dreams his own. I mean, the first thing to say is the original's very strong, powerful song. It's a good piece of work by Annie Lennox and Eurythmics and whoever else. However, one of the things Manson does with it is the minute he's giving his twist on it, he doesn't have to fuck with the vocals or the lyrics. He just distorts it almost by inflections and by his own appearance, to the point where suddenly you see, well, this song's a bit twisted and kind of, you know, scary, and it's about sort of stalking and how horrible love can be. Whereas you hear Annie Lennox singing it, and it's all more upbeat, it's kind of wistful. And one thing Manson seldom is wistful.
So a lot of people would buy Smells Like Children, and there's a couple forgettable cuts on it, but that's really what propelled us propelled us to the level where people were anticipating Antichrist Superstar.
Sweet Dreams exploded onto the world stage, with MTV championing the video and critics praising the song. The former Spooky Kids had truly arrived. The music world was eagerly awaiting the band's follow-up record. So, heading to New Orleans, the band went back into the studio with Trent Reznor for what would prove to be a protracted and painful process.
Well, unbeknownst to the public, Antichrist Superstar was a much darker, serious, even threatening record. A lot of the fun and mayhem and surreal silliness that was with Marilyn Manson, even up to the point of Sweet Dreams coming out or Smells Like Children coming out, was pretty much gone. Was pretty much swallowed up by the more threatening, darker thing that came from Antichrist Superstar, and that was like the biggest, most significant change in the band and the band's appeal, because it was, you know, once you get darker and louder and scarier, you can't say, oh, I was just kidding.
Antichrist Superstar is an industrial metal album. It's a multi-layered epic. It's very dark. There's very little light in there. And the light that there is has a sort of almost like a suspicious Nietzschean, even quasi-fascist tone to it. It's a clever piece of work. And a work of art will never be subjected successfully to dissection. You know, once you cut the damn thing apart, it never quite walks again. But there is something that's going sort of the powerful, if you like, heart of it, at least to my mind, to my ears, is it's very much about crisis, about collapse, about crossing the abyss. And crossing the abyss is a concept that you can find in so many different areas. I mean, specifically here, a primary figure is Aleister Crowley, the Black Magician. And he subscribed to a theory which is common in a lot of different spiritual schools and so forth, that in order to cross to the other side, in order to become a sanctified, or in Crowley's case, perhaps possessed, you have to put yourself through some kind of ordeal.
when we initially started recording Antichrist, it was, what was it, I think February or March of '96, and there wasn't a real clear-cut plan for the production of the album as far as the art of it, as far as the music. It was just like we had a bunch of ideas up in the air, and different people would make decisions at different times for different reasons. And it was kind of messy, and it was socially messy too.
We spent about 6 months in the studio trying to transcribe tapes that we had made on tour, and over the past 5 years, a lot of dreams that I had that I wrote down. And we spent a lot of time, you know, almost torturing ourselves at some points, trying to put it all together, because the album is a bit of a ritual in some sense to bring about the apocalypse, and whether that's of the subconscious or of the real world, that's up for everyone to decide on their own. But we spent 6 hard months of sleep deprivation, drug experimentation, and all sort of pain rituals and things, trying to tap into the subconscious and find this record. And when we were done, you know, it was a great weight off of our backs.
So, you know, tensions rose and people alienated each other, and it got pretty bad. I don't know how to finish this.
During the recording of Antichrist Superstar, Scott Patetsky, one of the founding members, quit Marilyn Manson.
Pretty much the reason, or reasons, I left the band was because there was a lot of favoritism going on, and a lot of my ideas were being neglected, and I just got really frustrated. And Brian definitely seemed to have forgotten about my value, you know, the importance of me being not only the main music writer, but like his co-founder, his original partner. He just totally forgot about it. And I knew it couldn't get better if it had reached that point in his mind. I knew that things couldn't be better for me. He saw me as maybe not even as expendable, but less important than other people. And I wasn't going to stick around for that, because I had a lot of great ideas, and you know, if he wasn't going to help me develop them, I was going to do them on my own. So that's what I did. I came back to Florida and I formed my band 3 Ton Gate, and that's that.
When the album came out, it was a huge success, reaching number 3 on the Billboard charts. As their popularity grew, civic groups increasingly picketed Manson concerts. The band even became a key topic of a Senate panel set up to discuss the effects of modern music. In 1998, Marilyn Manson's autobiography, The Long Hard Road Out of Hell, appeared on the shelves.
While it's not necessarily immediately obvious, there is a story being told in Antichrist Superstar. It's one of those sort of perennially unfashionable things. It's a concept album. And the story essentially is this character, Worm Boy, you know, this absolute sort of impotent, you know, vulnerable creature, which then sort of enters a cocoon and goes through this appalling stuff and then emerges as this kind of big destroying angel, this kind of satanic archetype. And that's the story. And it's paralleled very much in his autobiography, The Long Hard Road Out of Hell, because that's very much about him starting as this very nerdy kid. He spares himself no blushes when he describes himself, and almost seems to sort of enter into this masochistic self-loathing. By the end, you have him as being this superstar, the Antichrist Superstar. You know, on the cover of Rolling Stone, he's become this huge figure. But in the process, he's gone through this crisis. He describes all the things that go wrong, the traumas which affect his life. And he comes out the other end of it as something which has lost a lot of its humanity, has lost a lot of its feelings. It's come comparatively early in the career. It's something which I suspect was influential in propelling him to the sort of heights he reached in the late 90s. And it's sort of a statement of intent. It's a witty book. You know, it's quite funny. It's also an incredibly poisonous book. There's some very cruel things indeed said about a lot of people. Perhaps its saving grace is that the one who gets the worst roasting, the guy who gets stabbed in the back the most times, is the author himself.
By now, Marilyn Manson had established themselves as a worldwide phenomenon, and the band went back into the studio with new guitarist Zim Zum to record a very different type of Manson record.
Musically, Antichrist Superstar was a very angry album. It's a lot of spikes. You know, it's to coin the phrase, I mean, it's in your face. It's all these things. It's, you know, it's rage. It's despair. It's, you know, a very adrenaline-charged piece of work. And then suddenly, it's almost like a U-turn, because the centre of Mechanical Animals musically it's quite soft-sounding. You know, if you don't listen to the lyrics, you could almost assume that this was, you know, this was, if not a happy album, certainly a kind of introspective and perhaps slightly content album. But you add the lyrics, you add the delivery, and the whole thing just feels incredibly cold, incredibly empty. I mean, and the influence he's drawing on here were a surprise to a lot of people. Having heard Antichrist Superstar, which was industrial metal, you know, with gothic overtones, for want of a better definition, Mechanical Animals certainly wasn't any of those things. It was an update of glam rock, filtered through, obviously, through Manson's distinctive take on things.
While writing it and after going through the transformation of Antichrist Superstar, I began to feel again emotions for the first time, strangely enough. And the more I began to feel, the more and more the world started to look like Mechanical Animals, and that was the theme that started running through that. And I was kind of studying in my life and in other people around me, and particularly in Hollywood, how we numb ourselves and make ourselves less human and more mechanical. There's a lot of biblical references still on this record, and a lot of numerological references too, but the Omega symbol kind of represents the final stage of what was set forth on Antichrist Superstar. So this is kind of the final evolution of whatever it is that I am. Kind of thing.
It just was so Brian, the album cover, when I saw it, the whole androgynous thing, because that's part of the whole Marilyn Manson experience, I guess, you know. What makes a man, what makes a woman, what makes us who we are. Just kind of stripping away things that identify you as one or the other, and, you know, force you to look at just the substance of what makes, you know, what's inside, what makes up, you know, somebody. You know, and the whole idea, Mechanical Animals, that's just such a Marilyn Manson thing. You know, animals, flesh, blood, real, mechanical, fake, you know, created by man. That's just Marilyn Manson joining two opposing ideas together into one and exploring what it means.
It's a very deliberately cold. There's a lot of stuff on there that could be interpreted as being sort of, you know, almost love songs, but the whole thing just feels completely empty and shell-shocked. It's a kind of a take on the Bowie version of the transformation, of the crisis, of the movement between decadence and fascism. And it's, you know, it returns to sort of the Bowie Ziggy Stardust persona, but highlights the way that glam rock was so artificial. Glam rock was all about appearances. Glam rock, it didn't matter what the music did in most cases. I mean, Bowie obviously is an exception, but many of these bands were pure bubble gum with platform boots. And there's a level to which Manson's revisiting this, but trying to highlight just how fucking empty that is.
In April 1999, while Manson was on the Rock is Dead tour promoting mechanical animals, the events that would shock the world unfolded in Littleton, Colorado. As America sought an explanation for the unexplainable, the media, fueled by the reactionary right, turned on Manson, accusing him and his music of inciting the tragedy.
The events in Littleton, Colorado, I think it's fair to say shocked the world. This is something you suddenly had, you know, the TV programs were breaking their normal programming schedule in order to follow this live. And it's an appalling tragedy. It's something you don't know how to get your head around. It's very difficult. There are issues there, but they're not the issues that America is prepared to address in many cases. There's a long history of scapegoating music for deviant behavior.
Marilyn Manson, you know, didn't tell somebody to go out and kill anybody or to do anything. All Marilyn Manson's trying to do is get people to think. And if they can't think on their own, that's not Marilyn Manson's fault. That's society's fault. And that's education's fault. And that's their parents' fault. And that's what Marilyn Manson's trying to say, I think, with a lot of his songs. He's trying to say that all this that you've created, this mass commercialism, this pop culture that you force feed to people on Saturday morning cartoon shows and commercials and pop-up ads and all this stuff, this is what creates evil in society. I mean, this is what created Marilyn Manson.
Manson almost magically suddenly becomes the focus of this shitstorm. He's appearing in tabloid newspaper articles in here, over here, and presumably in the US as well. Often they'll just be his picture by the story about the shootings, with no real explanation of the connection. If they do explain, then they say that they were Manson fans. The logic isn't even addressed. It's just sort of they listen to this music, it makes them go out and kill people. The fact that Manson's a very popular performer, and there are so many people listening to his music and then going out and getting a soda, doesn't seem to enter their heads. This is a way of turning the focus away from something you find very difficult and having a go at somebody who irritates or even outrages you. The irony is that had any of them done legitimate research, the journalists, I mean, who turned him into this scarecrow figure, if you like, they'd have known that these two kids didn't even like Marilyn Manson.
Well, they needed some sort of scapegoat because it was something that was so shocking to America and the rest of the world at the time that they needed an explanation of why, and I seemed like an easy person to blame for it. And I'm not surprised at something like that, but I'm surprised at the extent that they went to really persecute me over it.
In the face of so much hostility and daily death threats, Marilyn Manson retreated from the public eye. Slowly, rumours began to circulate about a film project called Hollywood.
After Manson became an effective recluse after the trauma of the backlash from Columbine, he could be forgiven for wanting to abandon the world of rock music. It had become stressful and dangerous to his health, at least. And so a new medium emerges, which is Marilyn Manson wants to get into film, and he has this script called Hollywood. Not long afterwards, if my memory serves me right, you then hear there is going to be a new album. It's going to be called In the Shadow of the Valley of Death. the two are going to be companion pieces, as far as I understand it, in a similar way that The Long Hard Road, his autobiography, was a companion piece to Antichrist.
All I could say was, if it ever got made, it would probably immediately be banned by every place that would ever show a movie, and it would get like a quadruple X rating. It was just an incredibly intense spectacle. I mean, if you take the imagery of what he does in his videos and his artwork and in the imagery of the lyrics, and you take that and add an hour and a half of concentrated, it's like a concentration of that feeling and essence, and it's pretty intense, and that may be why it hasn't been made yet.
Although the film never came to fruition, the album did, and in the wake of Columbine, Manson teamed up with a new producer, Dave Sardi, and yet another guitarist, John Five.
I first got involved with Marilyn Manson. I got a call. I was actually on my way out of LA back to New York, and I got a call to mix a track for Celebrity Deathmatch with Manson, and went down to the studio, said, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. I was like, it was literally like, just come down today, we're just gonna do it for one day, Get there, it's like 1,000 tracks of music. Oh yeah, we're gonna do this in 5 minutes. And through the course of the day, we had fun, the mix came out great, everybody had a great time, and then he realized that I was in a band that he liked and I think had reviewed when he was a journalist in Florida. And was a fan of the band I was in. So he was right away, we were just like, get out of here, you're in that band, huh? So we just instantly sort of hit it off. And then pretty much about 2 weeks later, they asked if I'd come back and mix the Last Tour on Earth record, which was being done in the lead up to making Hollywood. There was just, they had done this tour, they had all this great music. Then that segued into, hey, why don't you produce the next record with us? Los Angeles is great because right out from the city, there are these hills with these kind of lost corridors and houses kind of tucked away in there. And this house is this big old mansion that was built by a pipe organ magnate on the whole property that was owned by Houdini. There's a big orchard behind the house, and the house has about 7 or 8 bedrooms and a huge, great, like 1,500 square foot main hall and a library, and it's catacombs. So we basically brought in a bunch of my equipment and turned it into a big recording studio. People were living there. We had all the artwork for the record was done on the top floor. Everyone had these little studios all over the place. It was pretty amazing. And we camped out in there pretty much for about 9 months making the record. And it was just a really insane, great world we created. And I think whenever you make a record, you're creating a world. And it's just a question of what is the world that we can create. I mean, some people do it in their bedroom, some people do it in a recording studio, some people do it just in a computer, in their mind, acoustic guitar. I mean, we created Hollywood up there. I mean, that house was Hollywood. And it's very similar to his house, too. It's just you could fit a lot more equipment in and a lot more. And we built it, designed it. I mean, we had teams of painters in there and carpenters building doors. And we basically took it as an empty house and had to give it back as an empty house. So the first whole part of the record, once we were finished figuring out which songs and all that, then it was on to, okay, now let's build the studio. So it was definitely teams of painters. It was classic. It was like putting on a Broadway show. It's pretty good, which makes sense, considering it's a Manson record. What are you going to do? Just roll in your T-shirt and go to a regular studio? Can't do that.
Hollywood kind of ends an era for Manson. It's almost as if he's deliberately shutting the page on one chapter and preparing for another. Musically, if you like, this appears in the way in which you have a lot of the elements of both Antichrist and Mechanical Animals. I mean, a Mechanical Antichrist, if you like. Some of the introspection of the latter, some of the force and anger of the former. With typical perversity, Manson decides that, yes, these 3 albums are a trilogy, but they're a trilogy in reverse. So you have it beginning with the kind of martyrdom and finishing with this kind of Übermenschen.
I think sonically and simply what I was trying to achieve with Hollywood was to make the heaviest record that's ever been made, in the newest possible way. So, I mean, Love Songs, probably to me, to this day, is still one of the most insane, just sonically and feel-wise, there's actually a lot of material on that record that I think is amazing, and That's just my opinion. I mean, obviously we're pretty close to it, but it's a pretty heavy record. So I mean, that was what we set out to do, and do it in a way that was where we all are. And you're making a record is just that. It's making a record. It's a monument of a time and a place where everybody involved in the project is, where the technology is, where the music is, where everyone's head is at, and then you leave that, and that just exists as a moment in time, and you know. So that record was definitely much. That's what I was going for. I think we all were just kind of trying to come out with a sonic machine gun.
There's little doubt that the emotions stirred up by the traumatic period following Columbine are leak into Hollywood as an album. Part of that is his growing anger at those who've tried to utilize him, to cynically utilize him as a scapegoat.
Part of it was a reaction to the media attacking me over Columbine. Part of it was me looking for closure in something that I began with Antichrist Superstar. Part of it was wanting to express a valid, important opinion about why mankind behaves the way he does, to point out that religion and entertainment are one and the same, and that entertainment can't be blamed for violence if violence is man's true nature. I wanted to put that into a record that took you on a journey.
Partially as well, it sort of brought to the fore the idea of martyrdom. I think for all of us, there's a slight masochistic appeal to martyrdom. The album cover itself has Manson in full Jesus mode. And if you want to irritate Christians, then that strikes me as a sort of fairly forthright kind of blasphemy. The only other thing is that if you notice, the Manson figure has the jaw missing. And that was his comment on censorship.
When Hollywood came out in November 2000, it met with both critical and commercial success. And in 2002, it was certified gold. However, also in 2002, Manson's long-standing collaborator, Twiggy Ramirez, left the band. Twiggy's replacement, Tim Skold, would co-produce the next Manson album, the 2003 Golden Age of the Grotesque.
The Golden Age of Grotesque is less of a concept album than the previous three. It draws on themes rather than a narrative, if you like. It's easy to identify the two principal themes and the way he kind of makes them interlock. The first theme is a kind of return to the decadent Berlin of the 20s and early 30s, the time of cabaret. The other aspect to this is a very American one, by way of contrast, and it's burlesque, vaudeville. It's always very difficult with things like this to identify the sort of who started a particular trend or a particular interest. The media's never frightened about coming second, and so something will go, and then suddenly all the editors will want that. And whether Manson sort of jumped in and exploited the sort of new interest in burlesque and 20s decadence, or helped launch it, is probably a sort of chicken and egg situation.
It's an escape from a world that's too ugly and we can't control. So it's being able to create a world for yourself. And this album, I think, will make people know me more, but I don't think they'll ever understand me. And it's an album about relationships. It's about things that I've experienced. And I think it's more direct in some ways, but it's very chaotic and Dada in other ways. So some people might not understand it at all in the way that I intended it, but that's kind of the beauty of anything that you make, that it's something for everybody to take away from. Any art isn't complete until someone experiences it.
With the 2004 Best Of album, Lest We Forget, Manson charts his incredible 10-year career, from local band to global phenomenon, and one of the most important and inflammatory performers in modern music.
And people like to be shocked. Life is droll and humdrum and every day, and if you're freaking them out, you have their attention, and they like that. They like that. They want to be affected. If it's negative, it's okay. If you're scaring them, it's okay. Because they're going to watch it, you know, the same way that they would watch a horror movie.
We needed something that was going to rock us, you know? And Marilyn Manson rocked us. I think overall, we needed Marilyn Manson. America needed him.
America needs someone like me to say what I say and to make sure that democracy is functioning properly. If we're going to fight wars and represent democracy and freedom of speech, then I have to open my big mouth and make sure that everyone's listening.